then I would pass the witness.
We can come back at 2:15, I think is fine with me. I think Ms. Glick, if you can have your school witnesses ready at 2:15 and 3:00, I think you said, or somewhere around there. I think that would work for me. I don't know if Mr. Gilbreth is going to be back, but Mr. Gilbreth, could we proceed with Ms. Weed's cross of Mr. Weed this afternoon, or do you not feel comfortable with that?
I think we could proceed with cross this afternoon.
Okay, so I think I would let Ms. Weed then, after we take those two witnesses, we'd come back for cross with Mr. Weed. And then I'm still thinking on, and then we'll probably have some discussion about some interim orders and resetting this case to January 8th. Also by not resetting it, but continuing this case until January 8th, where we would continue evidence at this time of the final trial. But we do have to get through this Christmas time, and I have some thoughts, but we'll talk about it probably around, I'm thinking 4:15 this afternoon. I don't know if you'll be back, Mr. Gilbert, but maybe you could join us by phone at that point, just for a few minutes while we talked about an interim orders that you're probably going to draft because you're the lawyer in the case, and I'm going to need you all to draft in, just so we can put some orders in place to get us to January 8th.
May I request that my cross then be handled on January 8th for Mr. Weed?
It's fine with me. I think that's fine. If that's what you prefer, then we'll just do the two other witnesses this afternoon, and then we'd come back and she would do cross on January 8th. But then we'll probably have a discussion about the interim orders sooner. I think Ms. Glick can handle it. So if we do that before you come back, Mr. Gilbreth, I know you have personal matters to attend to and you're excused, and I'll work with your co-counsel.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. I'll see everybody at 2:15.
And you want the assistant principal there at 2:15?
I mean, if they can be, and then even if there's a break, I mean, sometimes it just takes a while to get them up and to get them, watch them be the most easy to work with. But I was thinking if they get here at 2:15 and we made sure mics and everything worked, maybe we could get them done, started at least by 2:30.
Wonderful. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Hello. We're waiting now for Miss Weed. There she is. Okay, great. We're all back, and so we'll go back on the record. Going back on the record, Ms. Glick, you had just called the next witness, and what's her name?
Sandra.
So you've been called as a witness. A couple different people will ask you questions. Ms. Glick represents Mr. Weed, and Ms. Weed represents herself. And so at this time, Ms. Glick, you may proceed.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm a middle school counselor at Sycamore Springs Middle School.
And how long have you been doing that?
2 years currently with this school year. Previously, I was a high school counselor for an additional 8 years.
And do you have any specific degrees or training to allow you to do this work?
I have the master's in school counseling.
When was the last time you met with Kendall?
Probably right before she was not returning to school with the withdrawal.
And previously, how often had you been meeting with Kendall?
I would check in on her when she had absences, and she would come check in with me when she needed to talk. So probably I'd say every few days.
And what was your role in meeting with Kendall? Did you have a special title with the school for those visits?
No, title remained the same, just a middle school counselor, and just to listen to her.
And why did you decide that Kendall needed to be met with as often?
She had voiced some concerns to me. And so I decided I probably needed to just keep following up with her and doing the check-ins.
And did you have any specific concerns about Kendall from your visits with her?
She shared with me a few times that she did want to move with dad and live with dad. She wasn't feeling comfortable at home with mom. She said she wasn't feeling safe at home with mom. So those were my big concerns for her.
Did you observe anything that stood out in Kendall's appearance while she was at school?
Just with her I guess her mental well-being when I had first met her when she joined us last school year. She just seemed happier. I at that time, but as time passed and went on, she just didn't seem like her same happy self. Just, I guess, a little bit of a decline in her happiness, her less smiling, things like that.
And was it your understanding during these weekly visits that Kendall was living with her mom primarily?
Yes.
Have you ever met with Kendall and Miss Weed together?
I have.
Why?
Miss Weed came in one morning with Kendall, and we had a little conversation. Basically, Kendall had let Miss Weed know the weekend before them coming into me, because I believe it was a Monday when they came in, that she had let mom know that she wanted to move on and live with dad. So that's how the conversation had started on that topic, that subject.
And have you ever spoken to Mr. Weed, Mr. Justin Weed?
I have.
And did you discuss any behavioral plans or concerns with Mr. Weed?
Just that she really enjoyed our school. She was doing well here, but I did notice, like, the unhappiness starting to settle in, and her concerns also about mom not feeling safe and wanting to go live with dad. That same thing.
And have you seen Kendall's attendance records for Sycamore Springs?
I have. I'm not the attendance clerk for the school, but as a counselor, I do have access to see those records. So I am trying to think off the top of my head, because it's been a while now since she's withdrawn. I believe it was 12 full absences maybe, and 2 days where I believe the teachers didn't code her correctly as far as being out the full day. But I know she was out the full day because I would follow up with her and talk with her. So
I'm going to share my screen real quick. And Your Honor, this is Petitioner's Exhibit 6, which has already been admitted or was previously admitted. Ms. Zimmerman, would it surprise you that the current year total would be 14 absences?
No, that's right around where I thought it was, without taking another look at it before today. Yeah, so that would seem right.
Do you know why Kendall was absent?
I didn't know. I didn't hear that reason from anyone else besides Kendall, because I was doing the checkups with her. So there was a few absences where she really was sick and not feeling well. And then there were a few that she let me know that mom had overslept and just didn't get them to school. So those are the only 2 reasons that I have. There is one medical visit in there that I remember it being coded as a medical visit. So I'm assuming Miss Weed had took her to the doctor for that one.
And was it your understanding that these absences affected Kendall at all?
Her grades did slip a little bit. Yeah. But we've got some really fabulous teachers, of course, that work with our kiddos. And so she was able to catch up and do okay.
Were there any instances that you know of where Kendall was not picked up after school?
I was informed of one incident. It was a musical theater class, and they had a practice that night, and they were getting ready for the big musical theater production. And mom was not there to pick her up at the time she needed to be. So Kendall was able to get a hold of dad, I believe, and dad was able to come get her that evening.
Do you know about what time that was in the evening?
I think she was supposed to be picked up by 7. That's when the practice ended. And I believe dad got there at 7:30. I wasn't there. That information is from our musical theater teacher, who had let me know that information the morning then after.
And how did the attendance record, if at all, affect Kendall's grades?
I think there was a slight dip. It wasn't too terribly plummeting. But like I said earlier, she was able to make those up. Our teachers were very accommodating. A lot of times we ask teachers basically in not outright saying, hey, can you excuse this stuff? But if she's already mastered a concept, can we just move on and show that there's mastery of concept and basically not make them do something else over again? Because sometimes there's repeat, assignments that cover those same areas. So they did a little bit of that to help her catch up as well.
I pass the witness, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Weed, questions?
Yes. Hi, Mrs. Zimmerman. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Thanks. So you had mentioned when you and I and Kendall had met, can you kind of expand upon what it was that we met for and what was discussed in your office?
Sure. I don't remember exactly how the conversation started, but Kendall was upset about I believe you and her had a little argument, maybe a little bit before you and her came in. And the next thing I remember is she had let you know that she was wanting to move with Dad, and that you were a little upset about that.
Do you recall statements made as to my perception of her wanting to reside with her father?
I'm sorry, ask that again.
Do you recall any statements surrounding my input or concern as to her decision as to why she would want to live with her father, or what the outcome of that might look like?
What I do remember in that conversation is you had let her know a lot of things, not a lot of detail per se, but things that have happened in the past. And you questioned why she would want to move with Dad when Dad was being drug tested and he's wearing a sweat patch. You brought up something to the effect of another court case going on, but I'm not quite sure who that all involved. And that there's something in the works with another court case for someone. And why would you basically want to put yourself in that situation?
That would have been her stepmother. Is that?
I believe that was her, yeah, that you were referring to.
Okay. And then you kind of discussed her decline as far as her emotional state. And what did you attribute that to mainly, having met with her repeatedly?
Well, she just would tell me often that she's just not happy at home with Mom. She's not feeling safe. She does not want to go home to Mom. Those things.
Is it your recollection that I was encouraging of her to having communicate with you as well as the licensed mental health care professional, Mrs. Nguyen?
Yes.
And did she, to your knowledge, meet with Mrs. Nguyen per my request?
She did. And with you bringing that up, we were able to get her started. I know you had requested it, but we were able to get her started with that, with Mr. Weed signing the paperwork to move that forward. I did attempt to reach out to you, but I didn't hear back. So we were able to get it moved forward for her to start seeing Miss Nguyen with him signing that paperwork.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned, was it mentioned, or to your recollection, was there anything mentioned as to the alleged perpetrator in your office, Mr. Morgan?
Mr. Morgan, was there any mention of a Mr. Morgan to me?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know a Mr. Morgan. I'm not recalling a Mr. Morgan.
An alleged perpetrator or any type of inappropriate contact. Do you recall anything about that? Me having anything that I may have stated?
You brought something up, but I don't recall if it was a Mr. Morgan or not. But I
Okay.
do remember you bringing something up to that effect, yes.
And was it your perception that I was encouraging Kendall to misrepresent facts, or more so try to support as a parent?
I would say you were supportive as a mother, as a parent.
Okay. And did she state at that time, do you recall her having stated that she was, that there had been inappropriate contact?
I don't recall that.
And, do you recall me having stated that if that was the truth, then that was the truth? And, if there was anything further that other, professionals such as yourself may have been obligated to report, any type of reports to you?
Sure.
And at that time, you did not feel it necessary to make that report.
I did not.
And you mentioned about her absences.
Mhm.
It was an interesting choice of words. So you said did not code her correctly. So is that to, I guess, could you expand upon that? Because I'm curious as to if the program has been adjusted to capture the correct Kendall as absent or present, or is there a manipulation in the coding or programming?
No, there's not a manipulation there. What I meant by that was when she truly was absent for a full day, some teachers did count her absent, some did not, that she saw for that 4-period day.
Understood. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
They just didn't do that correctly when they should have.
Yes, ma'am. Understood. I guess my final question is, I guess the transfer in regards to Kendall was removed from my care and placed in Cedar Park Middle School, junior high, and then quickly transferred. I guess in regards to the testing or any grades that were transferred from STAR testing or GT or anything like that, can you kind of speak to my concern or my level of academic encouragement and concern as a parent?
The grades that are transferred over to her new school, do I have any concerns about those to let you know about?
No, ma'am. So I don't know if maybe you came in a little bit. So this would have been at the end of last year. Kendall was quickly moved from Cedar Park. She went to Cedar Park Middle School for, I believe it may have been one day. I'm not certain, but grades were transferred for STAR testing. And then she had to do some GT testing, makeup GT testing over the summer. Do you have any knowledge of this? If not, please just.
No, I don't get the grades that were transferred over from her previous school. That goes straight to the registrar. Same as the STAR test. Same as any GT information, whether, you guys had started the testing over there or not. And then for us to take over the GT testing here in our district, that does go to another district representative, and my hands are not on that at all.
Okay.
So that information doesn't come to me until until the registrar meets with the parent and the student, and that meeting happens for placement at Sycamore Middle. Then I'm brought in to help with the schedule. But at that point, I would be able to see grades with the paperwork that is sent over from the previous school to our registrar. But I honestly don't recall what the grades would have looked like for that, or what STAR test grades would have appeared on there.
Or programming, testing, or anything. Okay.
I honestly would not remember what that looked like, what the grades look like, what the STAR scores look like.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you've been able to do for Kendall, and you taking the time out and making her a special interest for her benefits. Oh, one last question. Kendall having been absent, did she ever report to you any of the follow-up, like health concerns or health issues that she was struggling through? I know she did visit the nurse But did she ever report that to you as to why she had been absent for that medical visit?
No, I believe it was her throat. She thought it was strep throat.
Okay.
And dad had her tested, and that was, that rapid test came back negative.
Okay. I did not have knowledge of that. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Zimmerman. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
I have
Good day.
one just quick clarifying question, if that's all right.
Yes.
Ms. Zimmerman, when you were discussing the coding of the absences, I just want to clarify, your comment was that there's a chance that there are possibly more absences than are recorded because some teachers marked her present when she should have been absent. Is that right?
There should probably be, when I looked at it a couple days ago, I believe there might be like 2 more days where a couple of teachers marked her absent, but in the other periods, a couple did not. So it's looking like she's there for half the day and not when she was truly not there for the entire day.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
May I follow up?
Yes.
So is the system that you use for this, for these, to capture these absences, has it failed you in the past, to your knowledge, or any of the students?
I mean, it does. Everybody's, human, and they make those mistakes. Our principal in our building is constantly on teachers to remind them it's very important to take accurate attendance for, many situations. So, it happens everywhere, at every campus, every school, unfortunately. That's why we are constantly reminding teachers to be very accurate, take your attendance accurately, correctly. But of course, people are human. Those mistakes do happen.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Zimmerman. You are released from the subpoena if you are under one. You are free to go and you can disconnect from the Zoom. I hope you have a happy and safe holiday season. Thank you for being here.
Same to you all.
Thank
There are
you.
no other collateral witnesses for today. Is that right, Ms. Glick?
Correct.
We've already decided that we are coming back on January 8th, and I only have the day, like I don't have longer than that. So we can do a full day on Monday, January 8th, but that's all I have.
Understood. We'll make that work, Your Honor. Thank
We'll
you.
start at 9 a.m. And then we'll probably start with Ms. Weed's cross-examination of Mr. Weed. It's probably where we'll begin that day. And then we'll move on to any other witnesses we might have.
And as per,
And then in the meantime, the court's going to enter some interim orders. And I need you to draft them, Ms. Glick. Basically, the children, both of them, are going to stay with Mr. Weed with a visit to mom. That's going to be a 2-night visit for her. We're going to talk about when that is. I think I want the parents to exchange. It seems like she's in Conroe. There's some confusion, but I think that would mean that Brenham would be a good place for the parents to do an exchange. And I know this isn't going to be like the way we're doing it forever. This is the way we're doing it one time over the next 3 weeks till we can get to January 8th. I talked to Kendall about this. Kendall and Case are both going to go. And I would like to do the visit on maybe Thursday, the 28th through Saturday, the 30th. I'm trying to think about traffic patterns and to make it as easy on the parents as possible, because it does feel like we are outside of maybe a normal Travis County exchange. And so I didn't want y'all driving on New Year's Eve if we could handle it. But so some of this is going to depend a little bit on work schedules and what's going on. And Ms. Weed, you're going to have to find transportation. It's not my job to find you transportation. So
I have transportation.
well, the last time you appeared in court, you said you didn't. So I was just making sure. That's what you told me. And then on Monday, you didn't get here for 3 hours. And so I just want to make sure there's actual transportation.
Yes, ma'am, I have transportation.
All right. So what works for you, Mr. Weed, on Thursday, the 20th, is that an okay day? I can also move it. There's nothing magical about that Thursday through that Saturday, other than it fits in the middle of the holiday season, and I thought it would work. But it also depends a little bit on holidays and what everybody has scheduled for themselves.
Well, and neither of us are working, so should we?
Yeah, they're gonna go to Ms. Weed for 48 hours, 2-night visit at some point over the holidays.
Yes, Your Honor. Is the 27th to the 29th? Is that?
That works for me. I think that's fine.
The 28th works better for me.
Okay,
That's
then
what-
I'm fine with the 28th too. What, Mr. Weed?
So that's fine.
Yeah. That way, I don't know what y'all's work schedules are. So then I was thinking, what time of day? Because we're going to do it the same time of day on Thursday as the same time of the day on Saturday, right? So what works? 4 to 4?
Works for me.
I mean, we're typically doing like 6 to 6, Your Honor. I think.
Yeah, but I was trying to keep you out of rush hour. But it also depends on work schedules. Like I said, I was just trying. I mean, it's not going to be a bad rush hour.
One time. Yes, ma'am. I think that works for me.
I just thought 4 to 4. It's more daytime driving than nighttime driving. I don't know. That's really all. There was nothing magical about it,
Well,
other than
Thursday, 28th. We can do 6. That works for me.
if y'all rather do 6, that's totally fine with me.
That's perfect.
Okay, then let's do 6 o'clock on December 28th. Mom will pick up. I'm going to pick McDonald's in Brenham on 290 unless I hear something differently. There's a McDonald's on 290 in Brenham.
We were meeting right across the street, so that's perfect.
Well, then if y'all are already meeting somewhere else, I don't know. But that's just, I always go with McDonald's for whatever reason, because there's always so many of them.
Kids Livingston had us meeting at Scoops in Brenham, so that works either way.
So 4 o'clock on the 28th.
6 o'clock.
Oh, sorry, 6 o'clock. You're right. 6 o'clock on the 28th. Dad will bring the 2 children to mom. And then 6 o'clock on the 30th, mom will bring the 2 children back to dad. I interviewed the child. I'm going to put this on the record. I do not have any concerns, especially in light of the bit of evidence I saw from Mr. Gilbreth on CPS. I feel confident, Mr. Weed, that they are not in danger of abuse by, I forget his name, but I feel like that is the thing that I was most worried about. And I did not see, nor did your child express any concern about Mark.
Yes, ma'am.
And so that's where that is. So, I don't believe they'll be in danger. I do think, Miss Weed, we might have some work to do between you and your children. And I think this visit needs to go well. And it doesn't mean that Mr. Weed's perfect. There's going to be a whole trial about him as well. I understand that. But I do think right now, your relationship with your kids is on edge. And so you need to try and make this as happy and as low stress and as possible. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then we'll pick back up on January 8th. We'll figure out something we're going to do. One thing I was thinking, Ms. Glick, that I might do, and I ask you to convey this to Mr. Gilbreth, is whatever we do on January 8th, I think we'll have a long motion to enter in this case, such that I might not rule completely in final and toto that day. And we might see how some things go for a while. I'd keep the case with me. And we just might have a longer period of keeping evidence open and maybe seeing how things go. These kids have had a ton of change and a ton of tumult, really, whatever we look at. Even with Mr. Weed, even if everything you're saying, Mr. Weed, is correct and your life with Miss Turner is stable. And I mean, they have had a lot of tumult. They have had a lot of change. And I think I'm worried about their kind of just adapting to anything. And so we might just kind of see a little bit how it goes rather than just going straight to a final order and being like, hey, see y'all later. Don't come back to court anymore. It might be the sort of thing where we need to make sure for a few months, even after January 8th, that everything with the kids is going okay. Because I feel like now I've engaged with y'all enough. You've engaged with our court system enough to where we need to check in on these kiddos and we need to make sure these kiddos are in a good situation going forward. So we'll probably we're going to put some orders in place on the 8th. I'm just letting everybody know we might see how it goes for a little bit and see how dad does, see how mom does, see if we can bring down the drama, not escalate the drama, bring down the drama, and get these kids to a place where they're not in some sort of emergent concern, because they have had some issues. I think, but under both of your views of the world, under their views of the world, they have had a lot going on. So what I'd like to do is see if, as co-parents, you can work together this first visit on the 28th. Let's see that we can do it, accomplish it, and the kids can be safe. And then let's see how it goes from there. Trying to do our best to manage the drama in their life so they can have as normal of a childhood as possible. And I see you trying to do that, Mr. Weed, Miss Weed. I think you, under your own acknowledgement, have been dealing with some mental health challenges, and we try to be very understanding of that in Travis County. So I want you to understand something. That's one of the reasons I don't want to just move forward, just determining things for all time. We need to look in on these kids. We need to look in with you. We need to look in with Mr. Weed. We need to give ourselves some time to make sure everybody can co-parent together, and these kids are going to have some stable lives. Does that make sense for everyone?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
I can appreciate the stance.
Okay, Ms. Glick, can you get me, and tomorrow maybe, some interim orders that are real simple, that are just basically what the possession schedule is going to be over the holiday season, and we'll put that in place, and then I'll see everybody back by Zoom, 9 a.m. on January 8th.
And if I may, just real quickly, Your Honor, I know that Jake brought up the request for the hospital records, that those were agreed to be produced in the deposition of Ms. Weed. Did we set some sort of deadline for those to be produced, just so that we're ready January 8th?
They're very large. I
Go ahead.
apologize to interrupt. I did send those, and they're very large files. I can send them again. I scanned them through a application on my phone, so I'll try a different format, but I'll send you a screenshot of them having been sent and the date. I mean, it was within the timeline. It was actually the Monday after I said that I would have them to him by, but I will, I can try to just upload them to the bot.
Well, actually, that's okay, Ms. Bracconelli, since we're going to still have this case, let's leave our box open. And if she can upload them as an exhibit, it would be respondents 1, I think, because I don't think you have any exhibits left. Or you have exhibits marked yet? But actually, Ms. Glick, that might work best if she uploads them as respondents 1, since we have an open box and we're carrying this case over to January 8th. Does
Love that idea. That works. Any other exhibits that are going to be introduced or planned to be brought up on the 8th would be helpful all in there.
All right. Thank you. We're going to make the record, and y'all are all. So we just need to wait for your client. Do you have a paralegal who we need to wait on?
No, I think this click is out today. So, and I'm trying to have somebody from my office call.
Judge, is there any way before we present that I could request for a continuance? I was in the hospital just Saturday evening, late Sunday into early morning Sunday. And yes, I have not been able to successfully upload the documents, but I've been suffering from illness in Montgomery County, Texas, and would just appreciate another week or so, a week or two, to get back to Travis County and get all of the information uploaded, even if I have to take it to Mr. Gilbreth's office.
Well, maybe we do that, Ms. Weed, but what I really want to do right now is I need to get an update about how things went through the holiday season. We have these 3 lawyers here who are here for subpoenaed records. We got to take care of that business. And so after we take care of that business, and after we get through all of that, which won't take terribly long, then I'll listen to your continuance motion. But we've had to, there are other people here right now, and we need to take care of that business. And then we'll come back to whether or not we come back again because of a medical condition. And I understand that. I don't want to be, uncaring about it, but we do have to take care of these other people who have shown up this morning I think under subpoena, and we have to deal with them.
Can I speak just really quick on that?
Yeah, well, we are on the record, so yeah, you can
Right.
speak on it, but go ahead.
Right. So my client actually has been really stressing out today because he has a job training that starts today. Right. And he's trying to balance that. He's starting a new job. Is it okay if he not log on right now? 'Cause it
Yeah,
sounds
that's
like we're
fine.
maybe-
That's fine. Especially, it sounds like y'all are both going to coordinate on something, probably, given his need to be somewhere else today and Miss Weed not feeling well. But I think we just need to bring in these people at least, Mr. Gilbreth, and understand what their records situation is. We got to at least
Yes,
do
ma'am.
that business. Okay, so I can't remember if I met with the daughter and then told you all about it, or if I met with the daughter after we were finished, but we have done that in the meantime. I know.
Yes, ma'am. You.
Go
Sorry, I
ahead.
didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
So we actually started with you. We did openings. You spoke to the daughter. You didn't tell us what she had said. But then we presented with Mr. Weed testified, mom reserved her cross, and you had a few folks from the school testify.
That's right. Yeah, I just couldn't remember when I had met with the daughter in the timeline. If that had happened after we had had something, but it sounds like we did it during the middle of it almost. So, all right. Well, then, Miss Weed, I hope that makes sense with what we're going to do here. We're going to bring in these subpoenaed people at least, and at least get their records maybe, and then go from there.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and go on the record with the court reporter. And I will say, this is Judge Amy Clark Meachum. We are in the middle of a continuation of a final bench trial that started in December. It is the weed matter. We've already started this case. We've had witnesses. We're in the middle of it. But because we weren't able to finish, we needed to give everybody time to put on their case. We reset it for today. Why don't we go ahead and make announcement of who is here, and then we'll move to pulling in some subpoenaed documents, I think, and the lawyers that are here on behalf of those non-parties. Go ahead, Mr. Gilbert.
I'm Jake Gilbreth. I represent Justin Weed, who is the petitioner.
And then Miss Weed, if you would, make your announcement.
Carrie Nicole Weed, I'm pro se.
And off the record a minute ago, Ms. Weed is asking for continuance this morning, which I'm going to hear, and we might even reach some sort of agreement to, but we need to talk about how we're going to do that. Before we do that, we have several people here in the waiting room, and I believe they're lawyers, one of whom is actually here in person. I know we've given her an office to set up with, but because we decided to do this by Zoom and she didn't know that. So we have 3 people here, and I'm going to tell Mr. Gilbert, let's call them in one by one. But here's who we have. We have Missy Atwood here, and I believe she told our deputy that she's here on behalf of St. David's. And then there's somebody named David Smith. I'm not for sure who he is. And then there's another person named Jennifer Van Winkle.
Yes, ma'am. Could we do Miss Atwood first? I told her I've had a chance to briefly speak with her.
Yeah, let me bring her. Hi, Miss Atwood. There she is. Thank you for being here this morning. I'm here too. Just so you know, I know we saw our deputy then set you up with one of our conference rooms. So thank you for being here. Just so you know, we are on the record. We are on Zoom. We're in the middle of a bench trial in a family court case. So we heard this. We started it back in December. We've continued it until this morning. We may continue it again, but we wanted to bring in the lawyers that were here on behalf of subpoenaed parties, documents, witnesses, I'm not entirely sure, and just make sure we don't have to inconvenience you later, even if we do continue it. So just so you know who's here, Mr. Gilbreth represents the father in this matter, and then Ms. Weed is the mother, and she represents herself. She is not feeling well, so she is not on camera. But Mr. Gilbreth, why don't you proceed with whatever it is that you're here to do with Miss Atwood's client?
Yes, ma'am. So I subpoenaed the custodian of records for St. David's. I'll show you the exhibit. If you have a chance, if you guys could share screen, Your Honor.
Yes, I just gave you the privilege to do so.
So mom had been ordered to produce records from petitioners 31. There's kid records. Of my understanding, talking to Ms. Atwood, who's been very nice and accommodating, speaking to me this morning, that there are records. She has records from my client for St. David's. Obviously, not interested in those. I don't think they're. I think for there some time ago. I don't think there's any records for the children. And that's what mom had represented. There is a record for St. David's South Austin on 4/27/2023 is what mom says. And my understanding from Miss Atwood is there may be records from mom from St. David's, which I had subpoenaed. I unfortunately had to subpoena the custodian of records because Miss Weed being pro se, normally I would just get an agreement that they're authenticated or I'd have them cleared up well before final trial, but this is where we're at, just given the nature of things. When I saw that the records weren't being uploaded, I kind of had to fire off a subpoena. And so Ms. Atwood, I think she filed a motion to quash. Obviously, her client can't just give me the records to Miss Weed's medical records. She doesn't have a HIPAA release from Miss Weed. And so I would request that the custodian, and hopefully we can have an agreement that they're authenticated, but that the custodian be authorized by the court or ordered by the court under HIPAA to be able to release the records from mom, but just from that one visit from April 2023.
Okay, before I hear from Miss Atwood, let me hear from Miss Weed. Miss Weed, do you have any objection? We've ordered you to produce already these exact records. And so do you have any objection to them being produced at this?
I do not, and I did send them back in December to Mr. Gilbreth and I believe it was Logan, but have not been able to upload them just successfully. So I do not have an objection to that.
Well, whichever the answer is, it sounds like we've got the no objection to them. So Miss Atwood, what do you need from us to turn over the records?
So Judge, I either need a signed authorization from Ms. Weed, or I need an order from the court to the hospital to turn them over. And it must under HIPAA specify a particular purpose. So for the purpose of this trial, would work.
So can you, Mr. Gilbreth, work with Miss Atwood about the proper form of that order and then get me the form to sign? I mean, I think it sounds like Miss Weed would do an authorization, but we've had some issues with that thus far. So I think let's just move to the order. I want to do it once, Mr. Gilbreth. So if you'll work with Miss Atwood on the form and make sure I have the proper form, and then I will sign it, and hopefully Miss Atwood has what she needs.
Yes, ma'am.
And just to be clear, that's for April, what was the date? April 27th, correct?
Well, I guess I'd like the order to say any hospital records from 2023. Mom represents, and my understanding is that's just the April, but I would limit it just so it's not overly broad, but to 2023.
Well, that's not what was just stated.
Well, but that's what we've ordered previously. So it's just now we know that there's one record specifically. Mr. Gilbert didn't know that until he went out and found them on his own. So I will go ahead and order all of 2023. It might just be there's only the one record, but it will be all of 2023.
Yes, ma'am. And I'll work with Miss Atwood. We'll have an order to you by today.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Atwood. Sorry to drag you down here on a rainy morning, but you're excused.
Thank you, Judge. I appreciate it.
And then now we have two other people. I'm not for sure either of us know for sure who they are. David Smith and Jennifer Van Winkle.
Jennifer Van Winkle is with Baylor Scott White. So if we could,
I'll bring her in. Hi, Miss Van Winkle. This is Judge Amy Clark Meachum. I think you're here in the capacity of a non-party witness representative. I want to just tell you a little bit of table setting of what we're here on. We're here in a final trial, a final bench trial in a family court case. It involves a custody matter. Mr. Gilbreth represents the father in that matter, and Ms. Weed represents herself. That's Miss Carrie Weed. She is not feeling well, and so she is not on camera. But our understanding is that your client might have been subpoenaed for some records, and you're here in that capacity. Is that right?
Yes, I'm the custodian of records for Baylor Scott White.
Are you a lawyer or are you the custodian?
I'm the custodian.
Thank you. So, Mr. Gilbreth, do you want to ask her some questions? How do you want to do this? Have you even seen the documents yet or no?
I haven't, because my understanding, but she can obviously speak to herself.
Yeah.
For
So then why
herself,
don't, you want to do some basic questions then? I'll swear her in and you want to do some basic questions, or do you just want to ask her some questions off the record? How do you want to do
If we
it?
could ask her informally some questions off the record.
Yes. All right, Ms. Van Winkle, I'm going to go off the record with my court reporter at this time. So we're off the record, but we're still being live streamed because that's how we handle our business when we're in the middle of a hearing. And so, but before we call you as a witness, or maybe we don't even need to, I think Mr. Gilbert's going to ask you some informal questions, and then Ms. Weed might ask you some informal questions just because we have you here, and then we'll figure out where we go from there. Go ahead, Mr. Gilbert.
So, Ms. Van Winkle, in response to the subpoena that you got, were there any records that were responsive that y'all were able to gather?
Yes. Yes. Our ROI vendor sent those over on Friday.
Okay. In my understanding, actually now reading through the messages and everything, was that via mail, regular mail, or how did y'all send those?
They were going to send those via FedEx to you so that you would have those on Friday. Okay. Since this became a Zoom, that's why they sent those via FedEx.
Is there anything additional that's needed as far as authorization from mom or court order or anything like that, or were y'all able to release with the subpoena?
The last I heard on Friday late afternoon was that there needed to be a release of information from mom.
Is that for y'all to release records pertaining, like, I guess let me sort of figure out which records there are. The records that y'all did send, did any of them have to do with mom, or they just have to do with the children and dad?
Dad and children.
Okay. Do you all have records concerning mom?
Yes, and we needed a release of information late on Friday.
Okay. And a court order. And also y'all can have a court order, right?
Yes.
Then that's the information I needed. Your Honor. So if we could talk logistics, I guess.
Yeah, let's go back on the record. We'll just do what we did with St. David's right now with Baylor Scott White. So let's go back on the record, Ms. Roccanelli. We have the custodian of records here, Jennifer Van Winkle from Baylor Scott White. We have had some difficulty, Ms. Weed. I know you have said, Ms. Weed, that you have been either producing these records or trying to upload them, as well as trying to get them to Mr. Gilbreth, but his office has had some problems getting them. So same thing with Baylor Scott White. Are you okay, Ms. Weed, with having them also turn over records related to you in the year 2023?
Absolutely. And both of my children were also seen at Baylor Scott White. So if that's, something that they're requesting, then absolutely, like anything and everything.
So
White is the point. So yes.
So the same thing is, Ms. Van Winkle, I'm going to sign an order. Mr. Gilbreth is going to prepare it, and perhaps he will call you and ask, or call a lawyer that you work with the organization, because I want the form to be correct, because we've had some difficulty with just logistically with Ms. Weed, who represents herself, just not being able to get things done. And so I'm going to do an order that's going to order Scott White, Baylor Scott White, to produce these records. Rather than going the authorization route, we're going to go the court order route, because we sort of, that at this point, logistically, is going to be easier. So Mr. Gilbreth, you can get me an order. It'll be the same similar form as the St. David's order, which is just going to be all of Ms. Weed's records for 2023. If for some reason you look at the kids' records and the kids' records don't have everything that you think is there, I can also order that, but it sounds like they've already been produced to Mr. Weed.
Right, and he'd be able to sign an authorization as well. So I think I'll just have it encompass mom's records, and I'll take care of that along with the other one.
Okay, then I don't think we need anything from Ms. Van Winkle unless you feel like you need something at this time.
No, I'm sorry, that would be directed to me. No, I don't need anything.
All right, so Ms. Van Winkle, that's it from us.
Okay.
Just look for, oh, actually, the only thing you might need, Mr. Gilbreth, you might need a direct line to Ms. Van Winkle.
I do have that. I believe we have her email.
Okay, good. Well, then
Okay.
he has your email. He'll send you that. I'm going to sign off on an order ordering you to produce it. It's going to be all of Ms. Weed's records for the year 2023.
Okay.
Ms. Weed, where have you been in hospital over the weekend? Do we need to put 2024 also?
You're welcome to do so. This was at Houston Methodist, which I've been seen at before, as well as Memorial Hermann in Houston. And
Okay, well then it wouldn't work. I don't think that's Baylor Scott White.
No,
so.
I'm sorry, not as it pertains to Baylor Scott White.
Thank you. Okay, I have nothing else for you at this time, Ms. Van Winkle. Thank you for being here. You are excused.
All right. Thank you so much.
Is Mr. Smith, and we'll figure out who he is. Let's well, let me bring him over on the record first, and then we might do the same thing we just did. All right, good morning, Mr. Smith. We are on the record and we are broadcasting on YouTube. Just so you know logistically where we are, you're here today as part of a final trial in a custody matter. And Mr. Gilbreth represents the father and Carrie Weed is the mother, and she represents herself. She's not on screen because she hasn't been feeling well. But we might have some questions for you. The first thing I'm going to do while we're still on the record, and then we're going to go off the record for a second, is ask you who you're here on behalf of this morning.
I'm here on behalf of San Marcos, Hays County EMS.
All right, San Marcos, Hays County EMS. So before we ask you we may not even need questions on the record. I'm going to go off the record, and Mr. Gilbreth, who I think subpoenaed those records, is going to ask you some questions. So let's go off the record at this time, and Mr. Gilbreth, proceed informally.
Yes, Mr. Smith, I appreciate you being here. In response to our subpoena, did y'all have any records pertaining to Carrie Weed?
I got the subpoena Friday morning. I sent that off to the records department to have it researched, and I haven't heard back as of this morning yet from them.
If y'all do have records, I'll represent to you that she said that let me make sure I have the date right, that she said that she had been transported by Hays County, or treated by San Marcos EMS on May 10th of last year. If there are records, would y'all need a court order or an authorization from her to be able to release those records?
No, we still have your subpoena. So if any records turn up, they should be fulfilling that subpoena and getting those to you.
And would do y'all typically do that via flash drive or box link, or how do y'all do that?
I have a third-party company that does our billing stuff, and they take care of it. Their actual process, I am not sure, but we don't get many direct requests, so it must be working pretty good.
And in my office, I'm sorry, I don't have my assistant on. My office has been able to get in. They have your contact information, right?
They should, yes, sir.
Okay. And that's all I had, Your Honor, for Mr. Smith.
Do you want to do anything on the record, or do we not need anything, you think?
I don't think we need a court order, and
okay.
My understanding. So no, I don't think we'll need a court order for him.
All right, then we are going to excuse you, Mr. Smith. We don't need anything from you on the record. I think it's Mr. Gilbreth has a direct line of communication with you, and so I don't think we need anything else from you this morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, then let me just go on the record now. And what we have this morning is we just excused the last non-party representative who was here. It sounds like if there are records, he is willing to produce them from Ms. Weed. And if not, for some reason, and we need to do the order again, Mr. Gilbreth will do the order for the third non-party. I think that would also work, because I don't think Ms. Weed's objecting to it so much as logistically having a difficult time uploading them for you to see them. So Ms. Weed's asking for continuance. It sounds like your client also has some conflicts today. Is that correct, Mr. Gilbreth?
It is.
So I'm okay to reset this. I have some limitations on my schedule because I'm not on family right now. And so we're gonna have to pick a date, and we can do that off the record. But while we're still on the record, I did an interim order, and I wanted to make sure before we did continue it further that we know what's going to happen in the interim, and that I just check in and make sure everything went okay with the kids over the holiday season. So let me hear from you first, Mr. Gilbreth.
I mean, I just have, obviously, with the child reports, I was going to ask Mom if we had testimony today of whether or not she asked Kendall or kind of grilled Kendall on her interview with you. My understanding, although I guess most pertinent is my understanding is that, but Miss Weed, obviously, with the one that had the knowledge of this, is that she's no longer living with the gentleman that she was with. That I think there was, she can speak to it, but my understanding is that she would testify that she no longer.
They did do their 48-hour visit with Mom. I guess that's more what I was asking. They went.
Yes, ma'am.
Everybody played nice with each other. It sounds like your client might have a problem with some of the things that Ms. Weed might have asked the child about, but in general, the interaction went without any sort of police or CPS or we did it, basically.
We did it.
Maybe not without some issues, but it was done.
Correct.
Ms. Weed.
Yes, that is true. Without issues.
And did you, you're having some medical issues, even under your attestation of the world. You are struggling health-wise, is that correct?
That is not untrue.
I mean, what are you still wanting in this case? Like, what are your end goals here? Have you had thoughts about that? Given the struggle you've had?
Struggles I've had regardless. I don't feel like there's been like a substantial material change in what I'm able to deliver to my children.
Well, you aren't even living with another person now. So what if under your care, what would have happened this past weekend when you went to the hospital, and if the children had been with you?
I mean, I have family members that I could call upon if necessary. But
in Houston?
Yes, ma'am. My mother lives in Conroe, yes.
Are you living with your mom?
No, I am not.
Where are you living right now?
I'm looking to actually relocate back to the Austin area, and basing that decision dependent strongly upon my conversation with Kendall and schooling, and kind of the last place that we were most happy was Spicewood area before moving out here during the pandemic. So I'm taking a lot of, the outcome that would, I guess, bring us the most success and kind of the friendship and support that we would be offered, but what she desires also.
All right. So it sounds like she's still seeking the same things legally, Mr. Gilbreth. I just wanted to understand where Ms. Weed, a little bit, Ms. Weed. I'm not holding you to any of that because I know you're asking for continuance. That wasn't official, but I think just to even reset this, we have to kind of figure out what we're going to do, Mr. Gilbreth, even until the time we reset it. So we might have to do interim orders, basically like we did again, another interim order Band-Aid that does another kind of weekend visit for Mom. Kind of the same way we did it the last time, maybe a similar setup. Is that something we could do, Mr. Gilbreth?
I mean, I guess I'd want to know more about, what kind of mom, where she's currently at. I mean, does she have anywhere to stay and for the visit to be at? And then just kind of what is going on without prying too much, what's going on health-wise, right? If she's
I think that's fair, Ms. Weed. I mean, this is done. You're asking for the continuance based on your health. But I may be putting words in your mouth too, because by the way, you're not right now. If we do it, the kids are with Dad and Miss Tanner, and so I'm not going to be able to just do this whenever it works for you guys. Like, I have a full calendar, and I got to set things what works for me. So you don't just get to reset at your next available date. You reset at my next available date that you happen to both be available for too. And I'm thinking, just so you know what I think that date is for me, is February 5th.
I'm more than grateful to make that work. And just to answer your question, this
Well,
last.
hold on. Let me hear if it works for Mr. Gilt. He's really busy too. And so I got to see if he's available that day.
I will make it work. It's day one of a jury trial, but if somebody else has to do the voir dire art, I'll make it work.
Well, I call the jury trial too. So maybe I can make it work where the voir dire is one of our Tuesday panels. And so then you're only missing pretrial. But just remind me when I call the docket.
Yes, ma'am.
So I just know I don't have a jury trial that week is why I'm setting you that week, because I know the calendar and nobody else does. Don't think it's something that you know that nobody else does. I just happen to know because I make it. So I know I don't have a jury trial that week, and I know who does. And so I'm available on February 5th. So if it works for you guys, and then it sounds like you have a case that's set for a jury trial that week, and I'll make it work to where you have a Tuesday start, or at least a Tuesday panel. You might miss pretrial, but you wouldn't miss voir dire. So we'll reset this on February 5th. But then the question is, Ms. Weed, I mean, right now you wouldn't see your kids until February 5th.
Is there any way to enter interim orders as you suggested? I would be so grateful to spend more time with my kids. I don't want to put it off and it create more of not tension, but I just don't want to put more space.
Well, that's what I was suggesting. I understand that. So I was suggesting between now and February 5th, doing what we did over the holiday, where we did one visit for 48 hours in the manner in which we did it before. I hope that worked. It sounds like it mostly worked. It sounds like it might have some big issues, but I also think, though, Mr. Gilbreth's questions are fair. Before we do that, we need to know where you're going to be, because there is some history of this case of you having your kids in a car for a little bit and not having a place. So where physically are you? What is your physical address? And do you have transportation?
My physical address, as far as, right now, I do not, I'm in a hotel right now. When Kendall was here, when Kendall and Case were here, I had just moved out of Mr. Morgan's residence. So the last thing I wanted to do was, confuse the issue of taking them to that house. Kendall requested that we stay with my mom, and I was completely happy to satisfy her comfort levels. So we ended up staying at my mom's house for the entire weekend. And had we not, staying at the hotel, I had leased a vehicle. And right now, yes, I am leasing vehicles, but I have reasons for that. I'll be in Travis. I don't have a definitive address for you at this moment, but in the next week or two, before that visit occurs.
Then right this second, the kids are starting back at school, then I'm not going to order any visits. We'll reset it on February 5th, but the situation is too, I think, uncertain, and we don't have enough, you don't feel well this morning, you're not prepared to testify. I think we can't at this time not know where they're going or who they're going to be with or how they're going to get there. That's too many variables. I'm very empathetic to your situation, Ms. Weed, but you need to get better. And we need to try again on February 5th to maybe some orderly visitation that makes sense. And we'll figure that out. But anyway, at this time, we aren't going to do visits. We're going to change it on February 5th, Ms. Weed. No one's saying you won't be able to see your kids anymore. I just want to give you a chance to get your feet under you, feel better, figure out more stable situation, and then we'll deal with kid visits at that point. But right now, we're going to reset this till February 5th. Mr. Gilbreth, you're just going to get me some very basic interim orders. I don't even really know that we need any, but contemplate very basic. And I'm putting it all on the record. And then I'll see you the same way February 5th. Ms. Weed, let me say this, because we've now had 3 months. We've been dealing with this for months and months and months, if not a full year. If you're going to do exhibits and witnesses, I need them by February 2nd. Ms. Racanelli, you have her email. She has communicated with you numerous times. I understand you weren't feeling well and that you went to the hospital. But before that, you had several weeks to do your exhibits. They need to be uploaded, they need to be done correctly, or you won't be able to enter any evidence. We're not going to wait. When we start on February 5th, we're not going to then go, oh, now Miss Weed, we're going to help you upload stuff. No, that all needs to be done before that. Do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. All right, everybody is excused. I'll see you at 9 a.m. on February 5th by Zoom.
Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, man.